All right. Hi, everybody. It is March 3rd, Tuesday, March 3rd. It's just shortly after 9:45 p.m. on the East Coast, and this is the Refinery, our weekly get-together of three conservative groups: the Free Radical Network, the Party of Choice, and the Conservative Union, to talk about conservative messaging and strategies and solutions to help, get conservative stuff done. I'm JD with the Free Radical Network. I'm joined by Fishy, also from the Free Radical Network, and Corey from the Party of Choice. Andy was censored by Google because he's been just really awful the past couple of weeks with the stuff that he's been doing. The nudies was just a low point, and Google actually has prevented him from joining in. They've filtered out his voice. He's there, but he can't speak. Also, Leslie, I hate to report this, but Leslie is being furloughed because she went over budget on the sound effects and did not pay the extra money that she needed to last week. So, yes, she's been furloughed. She hopefully will be back next week. We don't know what that situation will be like. But right now, the Conservative Union is not represented tonight. Hopefully we'll get Ryan to come on a little bit later in the show. We have a lot to talk about tonight, but the story of the day, which took over a lot of the other stories of the day, quite frankly, was Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress, and the freakout that happened after he gave it. I just want to hand this over to Fishy for a second to talk about the speech, which was awesome. And what was even more awesome was the freaking out of liberals after he gave it.
Well, it was a wonderful speech. I caught it this morning live, and it was very difficult to follow the speech and follow Twitter, but I managed it and retweeted a bunch of things that he had said. One of the things that he made clear was the case for the close relationship between Israel and the United States, how many presidents have worked with Israel in the past, how even Obama had worked with Israel to this point, dealing with challenges that they've had. Some things he said will never be told because of the nature of the sensitive nature of those things, but he knows, and he wanted to express that appreciation to Obama. So he set the stage with gratitude for what the United States and the other presidents and in the person of Obama have done to support Israel. And then he goes into the deal that the administration is negotiating with Iran over weapons inspections, nuclear proliferation, that sort of thing. And he says Iran must stop these three things: aggression against its neighbors, supporting terrorism in the world, and threatening to annihilate Israel. He made the case that the current schedule under this current agreement that the White House is pushing will only enable Iran to actually obtain nuclear weapons. And he made the connection from the Clinton years with North Korea and the sort of actions that we took then as a nation that eventually led to North Korea becoming nuclear as well. And so he drew those parallels, and then he started talking about the difference between that the administration has been trying to make between Iran and ISIS, saying that Iranian forces were attempting to deal with ISIS in Tikrit. And the problem with this is that just because they're fighting each other does not mean that one or the other would be allies for us. He actually stated the enemy of my enemy is my enemy in this case. And so he was explaining that in terms of I guess an Arab saying that goes back a long time: the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and contradicting that and putting in another framework. He gave this beautiful, powerful speech and really laid out the case for scrapping this deal, for going back to the drawing board, for not giving Iran the things that the Obama administration is keen to give them, apparently. And then the mainstream media as this speech is happening, reporters are getting snippy and nasty. David Axelrod actually himself was leading this as well, sort of poo-pooing the whole thing, saying it was not a plan. A lot of reporters were reporting, or were tweeting out that they wanted to see a plan, that here's all Netanyahu is doing is criticizing instead of offering a solution. And then the White House had been hyperventilating about Netanyahu speaking because he was going to reveal sensitive information. And Netanyahu met that head on by saying, everything I'm telling you, you can find on Google. It's there. Everything I'm saying is right there. So David Harsanyi had said 5 minutes ago, media, Bibi will reveal sensitive information. Now, during the speech, tell us your exact plan. That sort of thing. You were seeing a lot of that. And this is what strikes me. When the reporters are actually tweeting criticism of Israel attempting to criticize the administration's plan, they go to the strangest things. And Netanyahu was taking on all the objections the administration would have, so all it was left was for the reporters to try to find ways to dig around it. Finding things that would be like, okay, here, the reporters were saying, this is Munich 1939, or something like that. Comparing it to that time period, and that, criticizing Netanyahu for, comparing the Iranian state to Nazis. And then, of course, one of the tweeters actually corrected him. Munich was 1938. They couldn't even criticize with correct time frames and everything. So it was really interesting to watch, not just the speech, but the meltdown, the craziness, the reporters fact-checking, Gwen Ifill being obnoxious. I'm trying to find the thing that she actually said that just drove me crazy. Gwen Ifill, who has moderated a presidential debate, mind you, getting snarky and snippy on Twitter about this speech. Let me find where this was. This was so interesting. The thing she said, I am anxiously awaiting the little bomb drawing. Apparently, Netanyahu had made a speech before where they've got a graphic of him holding a picture, and it's got a bomb, and he's making a circle around it with his hand. And yeah, she thought that was funny, and that we were just waiting for that sort of thing. So obviously the media was attempting to make this a ridiculous thing, but the response from conservative Twitter was phenomenal. I didn't see much of anything else being tweeted in any of my feeds at the same time this speech was going on.
Yeah, it was huge. Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
Oh, I was just going to say, Facebook was the same way. I didn't have much time to check in today, but I did check a couple times during the speech, and it was just meme after meme, quote after quote of how awesome the speech was.
Yeah, pretty much. And the response, I mean, it's been pretty. I've seen maybe one negative reaction to it on the right, calling it unconstitutional. I'm not really sure how that fits in, but it's kind of amazing how unifying this was. I mean, in this short amount of time, in a time when the Republican Party has been fractured after CPAC and all of the speeches from all the people, everybody seemed to get together behind Netanyahu. I thought that was a pretty cool kumbaya moment to find.
Here was Sally Cohn today, her usual spectacular fail of a self. She said, hey, remember when our foreign policy was based on reacting to actual attacks, not just potential perceived threats? Yeah, that. And Twitter was like, are you kidding me?
I don't even know what to say to that. I'm speechless.
You know, I mean, there's no problem in the Middle East. What are you guys talking about?
Well,
It's
I
great.
mean, it's perfectly normal for people's heads to just fly off of their shoulders on their own and, be thrown off of buildings because they live a certain lifestyle and be kidnapped because you're women and Christians and all that stuff. I mean, come on.
Doesn't
Nothing's
matter that
going on.
doesn't matter that Iran has built up a huge presence in four Middle East capitals, and is doing a lot to be involved in the region where we're kind of not sure what we want to do. We're kind of we do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of like, well, I won't get into it, but it's just we have. It's ironic that Obama would talk about people not having solutions and not having a plan, because it's kind of reflective of his actual Middle East policy, which is to not have a plan and to have no solutions, and to kind of just like poke it and make it worse.
Well, and it's like he's proud of the fact that he doesn't have a plan. And he's just kind of letting it go and, oh, well, we'll just see what happens. It's not really a big deal for the U.S. It's over on the other side of the world.
And here's Nancy Pelosi today. Now this got uh, Lindsey Graham in trouble later for his reaction to it. But she said, I was near tears throughout the Prime Minister's speech, saddened by the insult to the intelligence of the United States. This is a group of people who are refusing to address reality, and their greatest, the greatest single threat to mankind in all of this planet is global warming. That's what these people are seeing, which plenty of people on Twitter pointed out that Israel would be quite warm after a nuclear attack on it, and that would really mess up the eco. What is it? What is the word I'm looking
Ecology.
for? The ecology, yes, of that Middle East, based on there'd be a whole lot of warming going on right there. So yeah, but this is what the administration thinks is serious. They demonize Republicans, and they talk about global warming as though it's Armageddon. And here is Armageddon on the doorstep in just a few years, based on the numbers that Netanyahu gave of how fast Iran is actually working towards this, and how many resources they have devoted to it. But oh my gosh, we'd better get that Delta River smelt saved in California. We had better watch out for those polar bears, because reasons, I don't know.
Meanwhile, we have disputed studies about the actual global warming. I mean, we've talked about this in a few other clips. The Great Buttergate clip from a few weeks ago, where the studies about global warming have been in dispute, and there's some serious stuff going on over there. But it is amazing that the lack of I don't know, self-awareness that these guys have when they're saying, oh, there's no real problem, when there is quite literally every day there's something new that comes out of the Middle East where it is absolutely exploding, and Iran is in the thick of this, and it's up to Netanyahu to come in and give a plan. Oh, he didn't give a plan. Oh, he didn't give a plan. At one point during the speech, I think that this was one of my favorite points of the speech, was he said that taking a bad deal, the idea that taking a bad deal is better than no deal at all, is ridiculous. And it is, because the reason it's a bad deal is because it's a bad deal. No deal, on the scale of bad, here's no deal. It's neutral. Bad over here, good over here, neutral is no deal, bad deal is bad. I'm sorry, I don't know if this is something that it doesn't translate well to Democrats, to liberals, to progressives. I don't know. Maybe it's just some sort of logic impairment. But come on, it's not.
Maybe you're speaking Austrian.
Yeah.
I don't
That
know.
must be it. That must be it. They don't get the Austrian very well. I do want to say that the Lindsey Graham thing was pretty amazing. It was pretty epic. I don't often find my says, but apparently after the speech, after he heard Nancy Pelosi's comments about that she was on the point, she was on the verge of weeping because of the condescension. Oh God, Benjamin Netanyahu was so condescending to the American people. It was terrible how condescending he was. I'm sure that's how everybody felt, that Netanyahu was really condescending. That she was on the verge of tears because of this, because of the insult to the American intelligence that Netanyahu gave there in the speech. Lindsey Graham said, "Yeah, you could see those tears underneath the layers of plastic surgery or something like that,"
Oh
and he
my
had to come
gosh.
out. He had to come out and walk that back and say that he apologizes if that offended her
Well, I'm
feelings or
sorry, but
whatever.
the idea of Nancy Pelosi saying that her intelligence has been insulted is just like opposite world. Hello, madam, we have to pass the bill before we'll know what's in it. I mean, come on, seriously. But you know what's really standing out to me in all of these descriptions of the left's meltdown is how much they despise America. They hated Netanyahu's speech because it was kind and it was respectful and it was complimentary to America. The reason that they don't see the whole ISIS and Middle East crisis as a problem is because those people hate America, and so do they. And finally, as far as the global warming thing, we all know it's just a thinly veiled chance for them to pass more and more regulations to restrict our lifestyles and just stick their noses in everything that we do, from our personal lives to the light bulbs that we use to the businesses that we run, making electricity so expensive that you can't even effectively run a company in many places, or for those families who can't even afford to heat their homes anymore. Every single thing that they hate is pro-America, and everything that they love is anti-America. And I just think it's really, really sad.
I wanted to bring up a couple of other quotes just because they amused me. Black Irish, which is a Twitter handle. Remember when the Iranians were in the streets calling out Obama's name for help? Instead, they were met with bullets and silence. I remember that. That was 2009. I remember that clearly. And what was our State Department doing? What was our president doing? I remember Iranian-led rallies in town here, on street corners, talking about the need for, and vigils, candlelight vigils, talking about the need for America to support the people of Iran. The Green Revolution, is that what they were calling it? Nope. So sorry.
The only green revolution that Obama did not like.
Right? And then here's Buck Sexton. Notice how Netanyahu says Islamism, militant Islam, and jihad, and not violent extremism or disaffected unemployed youth. Boom.
What else can you say? It's amazing what happens when you actually, talk about the issues as if they were real issues, because they are. This is the first that we've gotten to hear from a legitimately presidential type figure talk about this on this kind of a stage. I mean, where is Obama? Why hasn't the president, whose job it is to talk like this, to give frank discussions about the problems and threats that we face, what's up? Where is this? Why haven't we seen this? Because clearly it's a threat. How come we don't have this kind of frank discussion coming from the president?
And Lisa DePasquale today on Twitter made a good point. She mentioned that all those guys who made those great speeches at CPAC just last week, they were just all overshadowed by Netanyahu. And this is key because I think, interestingly, the country, the conservative part of the country particularly, reacted so strongly in favor and in support of Netanyahu because he is so many things that Barack Obama is not. But also it points to the kind of leadership that will be important coming from the right. We've had the Obama whole wave come along where people were decrying cowboy diplomacy, that sort of thing. We spent years under Bush dealing internally with the problems that a heightened level of security would mean. We have to be able to balance civil liberties in some way with national security. But the most important factor from this speech is that people in the United States felt that Netanyahu was a better leader of the free world, a better, I guess, commander who's fighting for democracy, freedom, self-determination, liberty, those things, than our own president. And the 2016 contenders are going to have to deal with that head on, because not one of them, I think, could make a speech the same way that Netanyahu made it today, not where they are now.
Ryan actually from the Conservative Union is here, so we do finally have our quorum. We're set as far as the organizations go. Ryan, if you wanna jump in on this, please do. And there he goes for his mic.
No, I'm not sure if I have anything to really say. I kind of came in halfway through the conversation, so I'm not sure what you guys talked about at the beginning.
The point you just made in the chat.
What I made in the chat?
Yeah.
I thought that racism was pretty much dead. Once in a while on social media or movies or something, you'll see a racist comment. I thought that the whole world pretty much agreed never again that the Holocaust was bad and we wouldn't let that happen. But the past few weeks since the speech was announced, I have seen so much hatred, so many people calling for the destruction of the Jews, let Iran have a nuclear weapon, let them all die, they're evil. There's no basis in fact for any of it, and people are just so hateful against the Jews, and I don't understand why. When pressed, they can't give a reason. They say they're genocidal, but then you ask for actual facts, and they don't have any. And I thought that was dead. I thought that we remember the Holocaust, that we were going to stand for their right to live. And, this is what I imagined the 1930s were like. Blame everything on them. And I just can't believe the hatred I'm seeing, and I don't understand why. So.
It's a interesting point. I think that there is a lot of racism. Maybe not as much in the United States, because that's what we see. So we don't see the kind of racism that's out there. And clearly, if we're talking about Jews in particular, we can just look as far as Europe and see what's going on there, and how everybody. There's so much talk about after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, even before that, about Jewish people fleeing Europe and heading to Israel because they didn't feel safe. So, it's really not a good thing. It's really disgusting, and I don't know. It just.
I want to make something really clear here, because there are a lot of people in the libertarian wing, I guess you'd say, who are against foreign aid to any country. They include Israel in that, and their reasoning is we shouldn't be giving aid to some countries and not others. We should take care of what we're doing here. We shouldn't be avoiding foreign entanglements. There's a bunch of reasons that they list for that. I want to separate that, which is a financial and a foreign policy position that one can argue, from that equating to racism and anti-Semitism. And I don't think that we're doing that. I don't think we're making those connections. I don't think that there are, many people who make that, anti-Israeli foreign aid kind of comment that I've seen who have those racist things attached to it. But there is a huge number of people who are trying to attach themselves to that message, and you find a lot of anti-Semitism in it from the way that they're framing it. And I think it's an attempt from the left and from people who are, Palestinian supporters and whatever, to kind of co-opt that portion of the libertarian movement for their purposes, and they end up getting a lot of people branded with a label of racism or anti-Semitism. I think those are two different things, and I think people should be thinking carefully about how they say things, obviously. But just because one has issues of aid, questions about what kind of aid is given where, then that's not necessarily anti-Semitism. But what Ryan's talking about, I have seen it, but I've seen it from the left a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you just take a look at Twitter, I mean, the vile stuff that was said today. Obviously, it's Twitter, so you have to give it that social media leeway that you normally have to give in these sort of situations. But it was pretty bad. If you were following any of the hashtags, it was ugly. I mean, if you got on one of those liberal tirades, the responses were just disgusting. What were you going to say, Corey?
Well, I was just going to say, going off what you guys are saying here, I'm seeing more and more headlines and stories from a lot of sources that are highlighting the anti-Semitism that's going on in college campuses. That there are Jewish students who are being targeted, or clubs that are being targeted and vandalized. And it's not being talked about a lot, but I'm seeing it more and more, and I think it's very concerning.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happened or why it is that this has become such a problem, but it certainly is. I mean, it's not great when the president decides to not watch the speech, not go to the speech, and you have this whole group on the left that decides to boycott the speech. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like there's very much support going on here.
Well, there isn't. And, I can't remember which speech it was, but I remember Netanyahu said something to the effect the last time he spoke here that the reason America should want Israel as an ally is because Israel can defend itself. We don't have to do any nation building in Israel because Israel is already a nation. And they want to defend themselves. They want to defend their borders. They just want us to support them. They'll do the work, but they just want our support.
And, someone said to me today that we ought to, that Israel ought to be able to come to the United States and say, fine, Obama, if you're going to be that way, we don't need you, we'll get along without you. That is impossible for the state of Israel to do based on their geopolitical and geographical situation. There is no way Israel survives without help from the West, and it doesn't have to be help in the nature of aid necessarily, but just the presence at the table negotiating things like this Iran deal. It is hugely important that Israel isn't sold down the river by a more powerful set of nations simply because they're small. They're very important to us, and we're very important to them. It's not so much a matter of financial issues. They've been able to handle and take care of themselves and grow things out of the desert. These are amazing people. It's the diplomatic and the international negotiation pieces in which the United States is so strong that they can damage Israel if they choose. And that's what people are suspecting that this president secretly wants to do. I don't know how he ever would prove now, based on the things he's doing, that that's not his goal.
Well, exactly. It's not necessarily saying we have to pour millions or billions of dollars into their economy or their infrastructure or their military. It's saying, hey, we've got your back. We'll go to bat for you. We'll sit down at the table and we'll help you negotiate something that will support you. Okay? and not get you blown off the face of the planet. But we're not doing that anymore.
And it would be nice to not have Israel blown off the face of the planet. Just as a general principle, that's a good thing.
I think so.
Considering the way that the Middle East looks without Israel, or the idea, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're the only friend that we got. I think it's because Israel defends their borders, and Obama hates people who defend the border of any country. It's just he's not cool on borders. Borders are not. That's why You know what? It makes sense. Borders bookstore closed under Obama. There are no more Borders with
That's
Obama.
racist.
That's scandalous.
It makes perfect sense. He is destroying borders everywhere, and sometimes it's with help from Congress because they don't do things that we wanted them to do. That was the other story, and that was kind of one of the other stories that would have been probably the lead story had Benjamin Netanyahu not spoken today, not talked to Congress today, the American people through Congress today, is that the DHS clean bill passed, and yeah, great. We're it's gone through, guys, and we did not fight the fight. We did not try and go through the battle that we thought that we were going to go through. Obviously, here on the Refinery, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about trying to have some faith and hope for this Congress and Senate and Boehner and McConnell, and maybe this fight was just one that we bit off a little bit more than we could chew. But this time we didn't get there. We didn't decide to fight all the way on this DHS funding battle. So the illegal amnesty is going to be funded until hopefully the courts take care of this. And to me, I mean, that's the thing.
No.
Sorry.
No.
Okay.
Because as I understand it, the money is appropriated, but as long as the injunction holds against the administration exercising this, it cannot be spent. So very clear, there's a distinction there. As I understand it, that's the case.
Right. But that's what I'm trying to say is that hopefully this court decision, this court battle, will stay favorable to us, so that this money does not get spent. So that sure, it's appropriated, whatever, but hopefully we won't have to deal with the consequences of the illegal amnesty because of where the court decision has left us. So, it was not a win. We didn't win today. We lost. We got our butts kicked, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say aside from what we've been saying for a long time, which is that elections have consequences, and there are clearly people that need to be removed, and that's done through a lot of hard work, and that starts now. It doesn't start, when the new Congress happens and we re-elect Boehner again, and oh God, it's here. We have to deal with this now. We have to fight this now. No, now is when we fight it for the next time. That's all we can do. We can just start to work and start trying to find some good candidates to challenge people in primaries. To me, that's the only option that we have. Nobody wants to touch
I'm
this.
just seriously depressed. That's all. I had hoped that maybe Russia's idea of a strategy was what was going on. Andy had told me that if the bill went from the Senate back to the House untouched, and then if the House made some adjustments to it, such as removing the funding for the illegal amnesty part, that then sent it back to the Senate, that they'd only need 51 votes to pass it. So that's what I was hoping for, so I was extremely disappointed when that didn't happen. But you're right. I mean, at this point, what do? We can either sit back at home and be depressed about it, or we can pick ourselves up and start keep working on changing hearts and minds and getting those better candidates and keep changing.
Here's the question for me. Okay, we were pretty much agreed based on the results of November's election in 2014 that amnesty was a non-starter with the majority of the public, right? That this wasn't just a small contingent on the right who's against amnesty. This is a vast portion of the United States electorate, correct? I mean, is that...
Yes.
That's kind of what we landed on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so given that, and given that this executive amnesty was so frustrating and so heinous, there's a lawsuit, obviously, that's holding some of this up. But the political end of it, all the guys who ran on that issue in part have, not all of them, there are plenty of Republicans who did vote against this. But it passed with mostly Democrat votes, and then some Republicans joined. All of those guys who ran on that no amnesty, no executive amnesty business, and all those people that they went and told, hey, we're going to fund everything except DHS so that we'll get to tackle this one issue that's unpopular, none of that happened. We were here staking a serious reputation on that being the case, that there was something going on here, that there was a plan, they were going to fight this. And I'm feeling today like there wasn't a plan. And I'm not the only one. Ace of Spades lost it today on Twitter. I will not recommend anybody to go read that. It's the most depressing thing I think I read all day. And then right behind it, the Rick Wilson had some actual constructive things to recommend, but pointing out that there's a difference in what the guys are doing up on the Hill and whatever, and what we're doing. We did the work of the ground support against amnesty. We did. There is definitely popular support on our side, and these guys couldn't get it done. And so that begs the question, are they afraid of the media? Are they afraid of donors? Were they winking at us while they were trying to let this go through?
Or do they just not care? I mean, I'm honestly starting to wonder if some of these guys just don't care. They're just going to go with the flow. They've got a cushy job. Okay, whatever. We were elected for the next couple of years.
And if that's the case, then there's got to be something that we can do about it. We can't make the guys in Washington become smart and stealthy and ninja-like about some of the things that they want to do. We can't build up for them the will that it takes to go against the media and to call BS and to come up with a plan, as Rick Wilson was saying, come up with a plan to defeat the obvious things that are going to come your way. We can't be the people who do that. Those things are definitely residing in the hands of the guys on the Hill. But what is our part? If we've built up this popular support for this, and we can't move these guys, and we can't get them to do the right thing here, what are our options? How do we carefully and strategically make our displeasure known? And thank you, BB, for knocking this story off of the front page, but we need to talk about it. Maybe a little less passionately. I know people are very upset. Maybe a little less passionately and a little more thoughtfully about it, but we can't let this stand.
No, we can't. And I think this is a case where, yeah, primaries are needed. We cannot continue to have these types of people in power if they're not going to follow through and support things that are popular. This is popular. Maybe the media doesn't like it, but come on, look at the polls.
Here's my question. Let's say that you put the target on Boehner, and only Boehner. Okay? What it seems to me that we're going to do, if we talk Boehner down the whole time, and only Boehner, and hold only Boehner responsible, A, you're leaving all those other guys who've done that in the lurch, and B, you don't know if you have the firepower or even a candidate willing next year to take on Boehner. to knock him out of his seat, whether that's the speaker's seat or his actual congressional seat. Those are two options you have to go against Boehner. But also, I think there should be a symbolic movement somewhere. I'm always complaining about people who make symbolic gestures, but I think that someone needs to be put on well, I don't want to say nailed to a cross over this, but somebody needs to be sacrificed. We need to cut somebody's, heart and lungs out and show it to them in their face over this. There must be somebody that falls for this.
Oh my goodness, we went directly into Tea Party terrorism. This is not good.
Oh great, here comes the NSA, JD.
Hey, I didn't start it. It wasn't me. It was Texas. Texas was the one that started it. It would be nice. I think it would do something for the movement to see actual repercussions happen. But again, it's a question of how do we do it? Who do we pick? How do we do it? It's difficult. And in the chat right now, I just want to point out that we have Brass and we have we have Templeton the Rat, who are talking right now pretty vigorously about primarying all of the things and all of that stuff, and if people are afraid of the shutdown, well, it had no effect on 2014, so we shouldn't be afraid of shutdown. I can't say that I'm not afraid of a shutdown. I can't say that was not something that I was thinking that, oh God, with the messengers that we currently have in place, that somehow we could screw that up and have it be really, really, really bad. And I do think that it was more of a fluke than anything that the 2013 shutdown didn't cause us to lose catastrophically in 2014. I've said that before. I'm going to continue to say that because it's what I truthfully believe. But we need to fight the impulse to just directly go into primary all of the things. But we do need to make sure that we focus our efforts on a couple of targets, and we can do that. That's not. I mean, we shouldn't be shotgunning these guys. We should make sure we know who it is that we want to target, and we need to get them out of office. It's not rocket science. It's something that we can do.
Well, I agree. And there's two things. First of all, I had asked a friend of mine because he knew more of the history of Department of Homeland Security than I did. But he was pointing out to me that about 80% of those employees are considered essential. So they wouldn't have been furloughed. It wouldn't have been an actual government shutdown like what we saw last time. And then, sorry, I just totally derailed on my other thought.
No, it's a good point.
Out.
It's a good point to make that no, this wouldn't have been a shutdown the way that we would think of a shutdown normally would go down, but it would be portrayed that way. It would be portrayed, oh my God, now when the world is crazy and everything is going horrible, and we've got ISIS and we've got all of these threats, and we've got who knows if there are sleeper cells in the United States. We need DHS on full, and that's exactly where they would go, and there would be that kind of thing. Which again, I hate to say this. I hate to even to rationalize the fact that we're not having this fight, because I want this fight. I wanted this fight, and I thought that we could win this fight. But
well, yeah, and besides which, come on, you know what? If you're really that worried about the border, Democrats, media, and about terrorism, how about you let the Border Patrol do their job? How about you arm them, allow them to, defend themselves when rocks are being thrown at their head? But as far as amnesty, I think this is something that is really important, that we really need to be taking more seriously as Republicans. Because, look, if you grant amnesty, those people who are coming here, there are some good ones. I totally agree. There are people who are trying to get out of desperate situations. They want a better life, etc. But there are far too many who are coming here who are criminals and who are coming here only to work the system. And when you look at the demographics and how they vote, over 94% of them or something like that vote Democrat. That is the only reason that they want this to go through.
And I think it's one measure of an advantage for candidates who are governors for 2016 and not in Congress as senators or whatever. It's one advantage to them that their handprints are not going to be on this. They're not going to have to deal with this. They can take a separate position. They don't have a voting record on it, nothing like that. And it's probably a good argument for a gubernatorial candidate who can separate himself from Washington, or herself. I know a governor that is a she that would be a pretty interesting candidate in the first or second chair there. But that is an opportunity, but it's something that we need to think about in terms of supporting these guys on these issues. Governors have to administer. They don't have to do this deal-making one-on-one with their colleagues and come to some consensus. They have to lead. And as much as it pains me to say that, and as big a fan as I am of Rand Paul and some of the other senators that have been around there, this is a serious consideration.
I agree, and it's nice for Scott Walker. It's a pretty good, pretty sweet deal for Scott Walker that he has to worry about the Canadians coming across the lake. That's his experience over there with illegal immigration and all that fun stuff. Obviously, there are illegals being bussed throughout the country, so that clearly there is some level that he has to deal with it. But that's something else that I saw today a lot, actually, in discussion of the topic, is the idea that on the subject of immigration itself, we have punted on the issue of immigration. We haven't really had, and there's a reason, obviously, for that. We've got a Democratic president right now. We've got some serious stuff to deal with in the Senate and the House. Obviously, when something that we thought was favorable for us to have a discussion on, for us to have a vote on, goes as far south as this DHS fight has been, it would be almost suicide to go and launch into an immigration fight, into trying to have some immigration reform. But that's the thing, is that we are going to continue dealing with this stuff until we actually have some kind of immigration reform put into place. And I hope we can wait until 2017 to get that done, but it's going to be a looming subject until then. It's going to be constantly there until we do something about it, and we have to come to terms with the fact that there are going to be, millions of people that we don't know what to do with. That it's going to be a really hard sell to boot them out of the country. I don't know how we can figure this out, because we have people on our side that are not going to deal with it, are going to be very upset with even the idea that some of these people are going to stay here. Some of these illegal immigrants are going to stay here, and where is the middle ground there?
Well, and we talked about this messaging, this positive messaging versus the negative messaging around this, and the article that Leslie had pointed to in, what was it, the Daily Signal, about how the Democrats wanted to pass this bill that would allow illegal immigrants to take $24,000 or something like that in assistance, filing tax returns, getting refunds, whatever. I don't remember the mechanics of it. And then on the other side, you had them endangering national security by forcing the shutdown, Democrats forcing the shutdown in order to take money away from border guards to give it to people who are here illegally. Okay, that's as good an argument as you can make in terms of fairness and priorities, and it wasn't made. It wasn't made at the highest levels where it needed to be. It was made in a blog. And this is something that's seriously wrong with the right, is that our best thinkers are not the people that are informing the folks in Washington. Now, that said, I've said it 100 times, that the only way that this immigration problem that we have of plenty of people that are here illegally ever gets solved is to criminalize and heavily fine the act of hiring people that are undocumented, people that are here illegally. And then the problem takes care of itself. People self-deport at that point. And businesses learn that it's a higher cost to hire people that come at a lower cost than they do hiring people who are here legitimately or who are American citizens. The problem with that is not one person in politics will ever support a policy like that. The left wants their voters, and the right wants people who will work for low wages, and at least in terms of the businesses that hire them. And those guys make campaign contributions and try to influence and lobby for legislation. They absolutely do. I've seen it here in Texas with some major businesses here. This is what they do. So given that that is the only solution, and it's an absolutely impossible one, because no one will support it.
Actually, I have another idea that could go along with that, Fishy.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, Oklahoma did this. I was reading about this a couple of years ago. But if you cut off the public assistance dollars, there's really not a whole lot for them to stay here for. Yes, they are going to, some of them will stay because they want to work for the lower wages. But a lot of the reasons that they stay is because they are being supplemented through our welfare system. Whether it's our emergency rooms, which are being overrun and used as PCPs that they never pay for. I mean, I've seen news stories here in Colorado where there are illegals who are being interviewed on television bragging about how they don't care, they know they're not going to get caught, they have no intention of paying, their baby had a stomach ache. Okay, so you've got that. You've got food stamps, public housing assistance, WIC. There's so many things out there that they can get, and that is a huge reason that they stay. So if the states were to start requiring citizenship for these benefits, like Oklahoma has done in a lot of cases, they leave. And then they come places like Colorado where, you know, we have
go to different states. They go to different states, absolutely.
But I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier about working with the governors and giving the governors the authority to run their states. And I'm sorry, but people in the states, they're tired of paying huge taxes and seeing people get things for free who shouldn't be getting them. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't want to help somebody who is truly in need. But I don't know anybody who wants to help people who are working the system either.
Well, and that's a delicate thing, because how do you know? How do you differentiate? If somebody is in a car accident or somebody falls off, you know, a 2-story building or something doing work, I want them getting medical attention. I don't care who they are. And so
exactly.
The question goes to how do you know, where's the medium there? If there are children that are here that are, you know, children of parents who came here illegally, I want them in school. I would prefer them to be in school than not in school.
Well,
what do you do?
Well, but for instance, okay, well, let's use the medical one as an example. I have a friend who was in a serious car accident when she was living in France. She was denied medical treatment because she was not a citizen. Okay? It was a horrible accident, and she needed help. She had to be flown back to the States in order to get the medical attention that she needed. I don't want to see that happen here. If somebody is hurt, if somebody is truly sick, if somebody has a child who has, you know, an extremely high fever and needs medical attention, that's legitimate. I'm not going to say, no, if you can't pay for it, you shouldn't get it. But what I'm talking about are the people who brag about working the system. I used to ride a train, well, I still ride the train to get to work, and there was a woman who was on the train. I don't think she was an illegal alien, but she was a welfare person. And the reason I know that is because she sat and she bragged about it on her cell phone in the mornings. And there was one day where she was sitting there with her 2 little kids who were being completely neglected. You know, they were fussy. They probably hadn't had breakfast. And she's sitting there. She's like, oh, I just don't feel good. Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the emergency room because I have a stomach ache. I wish you could have seen the business people's faces. They were all shocked and appalled. Okay, that's the kind of stuff that I'm saying cracking down on. And the hospitals know who the chronic violators of this are. Again, I have a friend who's an emergency room nurse. She knows who the people are. They're coming in 4 or 5, 6 times a week to try and get attention. That's what needs to stop.
That's racist, though.
No, it isn't.
It is. It's racist. I mean, that's
the only color that matters in that case is green.
It's racist, and it's the Republicans trying to hurt poor people as they always do, because poor people are awful and terrible, and as you said, the business people were shocked because they're business people and they're, clearly
You know how
have a
many
grudge against the
Democrats are
poor people.
sitting on my train every morning? Lots of Democrats are on there, and they were just as appalled. And you know what? When they're abusing the system, what are they doing? They're taking the dollars away from the people who truly need it. So while they're tying up an ER nurse with something that isn't truly a need, there's somebody else out waiting in the hallway or in the waiting room who is extremely ill, who's not getting the attention that they do need.
And that is the message. That is the message that Republicans should be able to sell, conservatives should be able to sell, is that the waste, fraud, abuse, and exploitation of resources to the benefit of some people leaves fewer resources for people truly in need. That goes for welfare, that goes for hospital systems, that goes for everything. Everything that we do. How much easier would it be to help people that were poor if we didn't have so many of the people unfairly taking advantage of the system? And it's just a matter of how do you sell those measures. And by saying we're trying to make sure that people truly in need get what they can use to get themselves out of that situation, to make themselves better, to get the treatment that they need. That is the message I don't hear coming out of conservative side either.
I know, and it isn't hard, Fishy. I mean, the last election cycle, I cannot tell you how awesome the Obama ads were that were played on the radio. They told a story similar to what, we're talking about here. So-and-so goes to the hospital and they need help and they can't get the help because there's somebody else who's a chronic abuser of the system. I mean, these ads caught your attention, they kept you spellbound, and then they would wrap up with, now, President Obama wants to. You see, if we could just get some decent writers who actually knew how to connect with an audience, who could tell a good story and reach that that emotional core that is in everyone, it wouldn't be hard to sell, but we don't even try.
Well, again, I think that's going to have to come from grassroots leading on that. If we can find some way to finance people who can make ads like that and turn them loose so that they gain some attention, it just might be that has to come again from out here in the heartland. It can't be depending on the RNC or those guys to do it.
No, we can't, because they're not doing it and they won't do it. And when you go to them with ad ideas or suggestions, they just pat you on the head and say, oh, that's a nice idea. And then they go about their merry way and they keep wasting millions of dollars.
Right. And so if anybody happens to be watching who has a few $100,000 to spare and is really looking for some conservative...
Whoa. We don't even need $100,000. We could, if you got a couple of $10,000 hanging around, we can work with $10,000.
But
$1,000.
I'm saying if we were able to find some people who were serious investors in grassroots messaging, who were fed up with the RNC, fed up with the things that are coming out of Washington, and fed up with the political consultant class, and wanted to give people with real good, decent messaging ideas a chance, holler. I'll hook you up with some people who have done some good messaging, whether it's the Party of Choice, whether it's Ben Howe, whether it's folks like that. We'll put some resources into the hands of people who will be good stewards of it and who will come up with messaging that will be effective. We just need a little boost here and there to get those out and to get them made, and we will see it done somehow.
Yes, and we are really good at stretching dollars and nickels and pennies and finding really awesome sales. So... Yep, we can connect you guys, and we will give you a perfect accounting of every penny ever spent, just to prove how far we can stretch them.
maybe that's a part of the problem. Maybe that's the deal with the guys on the GOP side. Maybe we're only hiring rich, well-connected people who then become the advisor class. Maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe they just can't relate. Maybe they don't understand that there are poor people who are getting seriously affected by the fact that we have this deluge of illegal immigrants coming in and taking the funds that were meant for our poor people, not the poor people who are coming in from other nations that have poor people. That's kind of a point that maybe our guys just don't get it. Maybe they just don't know what goes on in the lives of the American poor.
Well, but I think, doesn't this go back to what we talk about all the time on the refinery, though? We need to reframe the issues and take a fresh approach. They're still writing ads like it's 1980. I mean, come on, guys. You have to take a step back and look at your audience. Where are they coming from? What do they value? You can't just say, well, our message is better. We have the moral high road, so, they're going to just get it.
Well, and then we'll move on. But that's what we do as a movement, too. We tend to talk about what we want to talk about, and we don't do the research and find out what people think before we start spewing our rhetoric, whatever it might be.
Oh, right. It's that whole listening thing, asking questions.
Yeah. So that goes all the way up and down the chain.
I have to say that's one of the things that my young Republican group here in Union County. I mean, that's our motto is that we need to listen first, then ask questions, then we can talk. When we're engaging with anybody in any kind of conversation here on the ground, listen, ask questions, talk. That's the order that it has to be in. Otherwise, you're screwing things up. What I wanted to do, I want to transition from the idea that we have these guys who don't realize the conditions for the American poor and exactly what goes on there to two articles that Fishy found that were really interesting, really good. One from, surprisingly enough, Cracked, and another one from, I believe it was USA Today, that have a similar topic. The Cracked article was initially titled "5 Ways Hollywood Tricked You into Hating Poor People," but switched to a new title of 5 Insane Things You Believe About Money Thanks to Movies. It's a countdown list talking about the way that poverty is portrayed in TV and film. And it's an interesting article. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. Oh, Fishy already has it done. But they go through a lot of different things about show the way that really really harsh levels of poverty are displayed on TV and movies. It's fiction. It doesn't actually show the realities of living in poverty, and even to some extent living in middle class. And that's the thing that was really, to me, was interesting about the article, was that I was reading it and I'm like, I've been in the middle class my entire life. A lot of these things hold true for the middle class now, and that's what the USA Today article is about. 7 things the middle class can't afford anymore, and there was a lot of crossover between the two articles.
Right, let's go through the 5 from the Cracked article. Number 5, even apocalyptic poverty isn't that bad. And they cite like Elysium and Dread and, what was the other one?
The Matrix.
Matrix, where they talk about the accommodations for these incredibly poor people. And, in New York, you would pay quite a lot to get something of that quality. Poor people can't afford to live that well, in most places, and it doesn't really look that bad. Number 4, they even cited Pretty in Pink, the 2-story, what do they say? Spacious 2-story home in the suburbs with a manicured lawn, and she got her own working car at age 16. So yeah, poverty is really relative in the movies. It's amazing. And it says, but here's the thing. Hollywood's heightened reality is supposed to work in the other direction, too. Fictional horrors are supposed to be more horrifying than the real thing. But when Hollywood tries to portray the worst of the worst poverty, the kind you can only get in a post-apocalyptic future, the worst they can think of is an 800 square foot, 2-bedroom apartment with some smudges on the walls. It's funny. Number 4, financial wounds always heal. And they talk about the kind of destructive things, breaking a window or gouging the wall or destroying a bunch of property. And then it's just pretty much, meh, it's dealt with. You never see the effects. You never see the boarded up window for 6 months. Or in our case, when last time we had a broken window, it was 2 years before we got it fixed. 2 years, no window in your house. That's how people live. People really live like that.
And it's not, it doesn't even take into account the heating. Well, obviously for Texas, it probably doesn't count for much. But if I had a broken window in my house, the money. I mean, we had a broken skylight for a long time, and the amount of money that we lost just because of the cost to heat the house during that time. I mean, that's insane. Before we got that fixed, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, for us, it works that way with air conditioning. Just saying.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. So don't play that card. Number 3, you can live in a comfortable life with a menial, low-skilled job. This is a great picture of Rachel from Friends slinging coffee at the Perk, the Central Perk, and how they get to do all these things like, go around and have exotic destination weddings. They talk about Sherlock and the sort of consulting practice. These guys had to go in together to live in the apartment, but they get to have, $2,000 trench coats, and everybody has a fancy wedding when they get married and whatnot. It's just, again, creating unrealistic expectations in people of what poverty looks like or what hard times look like. Number 2, you can always travel if you really need to. Things like from Breaking Bad, the terrible car that Hollywood showed that Walter White had. Everybody's got a real bad car, but it always works. It never breaks down. You never see them walking anywhere. You never see them taking a bus, because it just doesn't happen. Meanwhile, we spent hundreds to get, a couple thousand to get our transmission fixed in one of our cars. It lasted 5 days. It's back in the shop. That's what real life is.
And it's not just the cost to repair the car, it's the cost of the trips that you don't get to take, the stuff that you can't do while one car is in the shop, or while your car is in the shop. I mean, thankfully, my entire life, I've had a family that has had more than one car, and we've been able to, get from one place to another without too much trouble. But when a car goes down, that's huge. The impact is huge when a car goes down for any period of time, because, I mean, people have things to do. People have jobs to get to, and that's something that they didn't really. I don't think that the author of the article, the Cracked article, he doesn't quite understand that that's not just a poor person problem. That's a problem that exists, that extends out until, I don't know, much higher middle class than I am.
Right, and some people had to quit their jobs because they've been without a car for 2 or 3 months. Yeah, that's a real life too. And the final thing was, things can only get so bad no matter how irresponsible you are. And so all these poor life choices that people make in movies, it's just sort of magically glossed over. People, come up with these schemes to try to make money. They don't lose themselves, lose their shirts doing it. It's just, that didn't work out, we'll go that. Or if you get into a really bad medical situation, your medical bills in Hollywood, they never bankrupt you. It just sort of, you have a really bad time and you sit on the couch and you hope that you can, go back to work in a few weeks. People can't live like that. The drugstore, when you want to get your prescription filled, they will take cash, or you won't get your medication. You can get treated in the hospital for free, obviously, but everybody else involved in that transaction of getting you better is going to want money. And sometimes people just go and get the basic treatment, and then that's all they can afford. They can't even afford the follow-up medication. It's unrealistic, the picture that Hollywood's painted, and that's why it was interesting to see the article labeled Ways Hollywood Tricked You into Hating Poor People. I just thought that was really powerful.
Well, and don't you think that this is where a lot of the whole we deserve a living wage, $15 minimum wage kind of thing comes from? Because that we have, as a society, bought into these false ideas?
I don't know. I mean, I think that there we're talking about two different people. I think there's the people who actually have lived through this, who have lived through poverty, and the people who haven't, but I don't know, maybe are thinking that they're going to slip into it. I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of it just doesn't feel like the same people that are on these issues. I don't know if it's sort of an entitlement thing, where these things come from, because to me, whenever I see a push for a higher minimum wage, it's not a grassroots effort. It's
No.
something that's funded by a larger organization. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to say, but I do think that there are two distinctly different groups of people that we're talking about when it comes to stuff like the minimum wage.
Hmm.
Well, and the other article from USA Today was about 7 things that the middle class can't afford. This was interesting because I was sitting here thinking in my head how long it had been since we had had the opportunity to deal with any of these things. Vacations are more and more rare for people these days, and people are more likely to put off vacations and deal with other things, especially if there's a mini financial crisis. New vehicles, fewer people in this country can buy a vehicle straight off lot without a previous owner. But then what did we do? Cash for clunkers, which took so many of the used cars off the market. That's great. A lot of people can't afford to pay off debt. Yeah, ask me how I know about that one. It's tough. A lot of people can't afford to have emergency savings or retirement savings. Those are luxuries when
What
you're
are
trying
those
to.
things? I mean,
Right.
that's you have when you're dealing with the economy the way that it is right now, and imagine, talk about all the people who are unemployed. That's it's gone. That's done. I mean,
Yep.
that's ridiculous.
And on top of that, medical care and dental care. Again, those can be, even with insurance, those can be very disruptive events in somebody's life. Um, we talked last year about Ryan and his insurance story and the difficulty they've had. Imagine having to put that many thousands of dollars a year into healthcare that you know you have to put in there. And if anything goes wrong, if any of the cards that you have built this financial structure on is the least bit slippery or bent, the whole thing comes tumbling down. It's medical care and dental care can seriously cramp people and keep them from being able to accomplish any of the other things.
Absolutely, and it's just, if you're not in good health, how are you going to work? You know, if there are things that are it just, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's terrible the way that where we are right now in the economic downturn that we're in. I mean, I know Nasdaq hit a new high today. It was at 5,000 for the first time.
Well, and the
When you
unemployment
talk,
rate is so low.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's really low. Except we still aren't factoring in the labor participation rate, which is ridiculously huge. People who've given up on their job, on trying to find a job, and it goes back into the retirement. I mean, people who are eating into their retirement, and just trying to wait out the game, trying to figure out what's next. It's not a good situation.
Well, and anybody who ever had hopes of their children going to college, between inflation of college tuition and now they're going to start rating the funds that people did manage to save to send their children to college. Uh, and then employers with the glut of people on the market requiring degrees for positions that don't usually, typically in the past, require them.
Yeah, or worse yet, you have to have experience in the field along with a college degree. How are you going to get experience if you can't get a job?
And here we have a new influx of people that Obama is ready to grant illegal people grant amnesty to in terms of this executive amnesty. How can people not look at all these things and see it as a perfect storm for major problems for years to come in this country until we get new leadership?
And remember that these illegal immigrants are also, given tax breaks, given rebates. I mean, this is just the ridiculous stuff that we're giving away because, hey, we can do that.
Well, they're going to be giving, according to the article I saw today, they're going to be giving illegal aliens who didn't file taxes tax returns.
Yeah.
That work.
That's great, and I'm sure all of the people who aren't getting their unemployment checks because that the extension on unemployment didn't happen. I'm sure that those people are going to be just really thrilled that illegal immigrants are getting this kind of aid, but they aren't. So.
And that's why I think our messaging needs to deal with fundamental fairness and equality before the law. That there are people getting special treatment because of politics, because there's a group of people who want to punish others and lift up and help this group, and that playing on the idea of the fairness when we talk about it, and it tends to kind of, I guess, take the racial element that we get suspected of out of it. But it's very easy to tell a story of a person who's lost a job and contrast that with someone else who's walked in the door and has felt like they've hit the jackpot because of the way that this administration is treating them. And it's not just this administration. There are policies that have been in place for a long time that have been advantageous to certain groups from certain places. But the way I think we attack it from an unemotional and a harder to paint as racist standpoint is fundamental fairness and telling those stories of people who are on the losing end of that transaction.
Absolutely. I think and it comes built in with stories. I mean, right there, it inherently there are going to be stories to talk about the lives and the families impacted by the way this is fleshing out. It's built-in messaging. It should be. I don't know why we aren't doing it, but I think that since we have a little bit of time left, I want to move on to the last story, and this is another big story of the day, but something that I want to talk about just a little bit is the fact that there's a scandal brewing. I know it's shocking, but there's a new scandal brewing around Hillary Clinton, and it was brought to light because of the Benghazi investigation. Apparently, she wasn't using a government email address when she was Secretary of State.
Hold on. I think that's a really important point we need to reiterate. The Democrats said there was nothing to see in Benghazi. It was over. This is a waste of time looking into it. And this was found because of the Benghazi investigation.
Yes, and that's a very thank you for reiterating that, Ryan. Through that investigation, we found out that Hillary Clinton was not using a government email address. And you might say, "Oh, well, what's the big deal? Government email address." We have a Government Records Act where we need to have those things on record. We need to have all of the emails that go from person to person for freedom of information request reasons, for just having them on hand for reference reasons. And we don't have them because it was a private email that Hillary Clinton was using. It was her own private address that she was using. So we don't know who she was communicating with. We don't know any of these things as she was the Secretary of State. So that's what's really mind-boggling about this. it's been brought up that there were several countries who donated to the Clinton Foundation uh, during her time as Secretary of State. We don't know what kind of emails she's had with those countries. We don't know the communication she had with those people, and what, if any, strings were attached to the money that went to her foundation. That's not something that we know, and we probably aren't ever going to know it because she is the one who controls her emails. We don't know. Some of them could be deleted, some of them could be gone, some of them were turned over. We don't know how many there were. We don't know what was, the content of those emails, and this is a big deal because she violated laws that we have on hand, and it doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good, and even the left, I mean, the media is like, we can't defend this. This is a huge thing. She has to get out in front of this soon. Fishy points out in the chat that there's a pattern here. I mean, go back to Lois Lerner and the IRS and that debacle and all the IRS emails that were disappeared, and the even before that there was I can't remember where it was. There was a person in the Obama administration using a fake name on her email account. So there's like a real overwhelming sense that this is a theme here. This has been going on, and it's particularly, to me, interesting that this was from a administration that was going to be the most transparent ever. They have gone after whistleblowers, and they've done stuff like this to obfuscate the truth. What actually has gone on. It's mind-boggling that this was allowed to happen, and now, I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless that this was allowed to happen. I don't know who on their side was like, oh, hey, you know what? It's probably okay that Hillary doesn't have a government email account, that she just uses her private thing. I'm sure that's not going to come back and bite us. Who was the guy? Who was the genius that thought this was a good idea? And I don't know. I hope that we can make something of this because it stinks. Looking at it, it is awful. And we need to be talking about this a lot.
Okay, so 2 points here. Everyone, literally everyone in the administration knew that she was not using a government email account because they were emailing and receiving emails to and from her personal account.
Obviously.
So Obama knew, like everyone knew. They're all complicit in it. Second, it's also for security. Yeah, Gmail has great security, but not as well as the highest security level of the United States government.
It wasn't a Gmail though. It was her own. It was through her foundation or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just saying Google has good security, but the government's is better. And
I just want to point out that it was an EPA administrator that used the fake name. Thanks, Templeton the Rat, in the chat for remembering. I'm sorry, I knew it. I just was out of my mind. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Those were my 2 points. I mean, everyone knew about it, did nothing, and also it's more secure that way. That's another really important reason. She's Secretary of State. She has access to all kinds of secrets. She has access to like troop movements, what was really happened in Benghazi. Like, for all we know, they hacked her email, and that's how they found out where and when everyone was going to be there and all that stuff. I mean, I really doubt it, but it's possible. And then also, like you point out, she's received hundreds of millions of dollars from terrorist groups and governments that fund terrorists while she was Secretary of the State. We need to see all of her emails to see what she was getting out of the deal. Why are terrorists giving her hundreds of millions of dollars? What
her foundation?
Yeah, but basically her presidential fund so she can run for president in 2016. So what are they getting from her for all of that money? What is she promising them? Is she giving them secrets like her husband did with China? I don't know.
It's the only thing that I can say, because this is terrifying that this actually happened and was allowed to happen, and we have how many lawyers I mean, again, how many people who have, law degrees got to see this, knew that it was happening, and didn't blink an eye? It's mind-boggling that this was allowed to happen, and the only thing that I can take solace in is the hope that this is enough to destroy any chances that she has for 2016, because who do the Democrats have after this? I mean, if this scandal really hits in the way that it should hit, I mean, because to me, if this was a Republican who did this, I mean, they would be dead already. They would be out of office. I mean, any chance that they would have it at any higher office at anything would be gone already. I mean, it would just be done.
Totally. And I think that's where we park on this issue, is that we need to be consistent about complaints of people not being transparent in government. No matter who it is, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, we need to talk about those things in that way. Is that here she had all these donations. There's no way to prove that we have all the emails because they're under her control. That's why in government we have policies not to do this, and she violated that from the start, and everybody knew it. And the law applies equally. If you're going to pitch a fit, and this is great that Hot Air went and did this, they went back to the Bush administration where some things had happened, information had gone missing, and they pulled up, Hot Air pulled up the things that journalists were saying at the time about that, and it gave the journalists in this case no room to move and to try to defend Hillary as this was an oversight or this was just a small mistake. And if we are going to hold them to that level of consistency, it's all the better for us, because the media now can't run from this. They can't at all. It was funny. Kevin Williamson made I think it was Kevin Williamson, made a comment that, no, it was John Gabriel, made a comment when one of the reporters said, how did this go on for so long and nobody said anything? And John Gabriel added to the tweet, asked the journalist. And then he gets savaged by the journalists for calling out, a bunch of them, for calling out journalists for not picking up this story, not asking those questions, when they obviously had done this to Republicans in the past. Our consistency is going to save us on this one. It's the same kind of consistency that we insist upon, that people should be able to say. We don't want anybody to shut up. We want them to say whatever, crazy thing even pops in their head on the left or whatever. We don't want people fired like Alec Baldwin for things he says, just like we wouldn't want Phil Robertson fired for things that he says. It's that intellectual consistency that you bring to the table that proves your argument is superior. And I think standing on that, standing for transparency, no matter who it is going to benefit us in the long run. And that's something that we can take from now until middle of next year and continue to bring up when we talk about Hillary. It's a long bunch of paper cuts that we can start inflicting right now using this. And that's current. That's not 90s Clinton stuff. That's now.
It is now, and I hope that we can do that. I hope that this is not going to. I mean, to me, with just the stuff that we currently know, I don't think that this is going anywhere. I hope that it's not going anywhere, and if it does, then it's just like, I don't see how this could not be a story. I don't see how this could not be a major thing that has huge ramifications going forward. Another thing that's right now is the end of the show. I just want to say that we've gone and we've carried on, even though Leslie's been furloughed for using too many sound effects last week. I want to thank everybody for 3 minutes. I'm so sorry. I thought that we were closing up. Again, I do want to thank everybody who showed up in the chat for being here tonight. And sorry, Fishy. Yeah. Anyway, thanks to Prue and to Templeton and to Brass and to Stefan and everybody. PD. We had T was in there, and yeah, we had a pretty great group in the chat room tonight. Um, Hopefully you guys, if you like the show, you'll be back here next week. We've got our podcast is going to be on Vigilant Liberty Radio. It's also going to be on the refineryshow.com shortly after we have this after the show goes up on YouTube. And yeah, be sure to visit freeradicalnetwork.com, the Conservative Union on Google Plus, and of course thepartyofchoice.com.
Yes, and if you guys like what we're doing, definitely share it. We have been talking to rather small audience of dedicated people who really do support what we do, and we cannot thank them enough. And we just want more people to be able to get in on the conversation. So all the videos that you see that we share out every week, from the little snips that we send, share that stuff around. Get more people talking about the things that we're talking about. We are not we don't have the largest megaphones. We don't have the biggest platforms. But with your help, we can get bigger ones. We can have our voices carry a little bit farther. And maybe some of the good things that we talk about and that our audience talks about and our chatters contribute to the conversation will find their way into a set of ears that really need to hear them. So thanks for all the sharing that you do, and share some more. We appreciate it.
We had our first 900 plus view clip, I have to say, 2 weeks, or 2 weeks ago. It was part of the show from 2 weeks ago. 900 plus views on YouTube, which is amazing to me. Just seeing the numbers go up on the views from episodes from week to week. It was our best week ever, and we had just it was awesome to see. So again, thanks everybody for sharing. Thanks everybody for showing up, and we will see you guys next week, same time, 9:45 Tuesday night, for the Refinery. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next week.